not think that this guy did as good of a job as the other guy.
Yeah.
Because the other guy's, he presents the whole thing well. And
he is a business
he's a business in himself.
He's
he
not just like, hey, we helped you out with this random guy holding a power washer, right?
Correct. And I was telling the customer, I said, but when I send him, I said the whole value of him isn't just in the power washer and the water. I said, it's the whole thing. His truck's clean. He's nice. He's not too nosy. He doesn't talk too much. He just comes in. How are you? He's polite. He's professional. He does his job. And the customers love that.
Yeah.
So it's the value. Why I'm trying to say that is that the value of that person is worth something.
In the experience as a whole.
Now, if he said to me, okay, Sam, you need a job done. Okay. And I'm going to go send this new person that works for me. And that person came and was, a slob, and they were filthy, and they were, all a little bit really rough around the edge. It wouldn't be the same value. Now, all of a sudden, I would say, you know what? I might as well just send, anybody there. Grab anybody and throw a power washer on that job.
Yeah.
But now this guy comes in at the end of it, and it's like a very clean,
professional experience.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That makes total sense. Now that's cool. So I guess I want to know, obviously there's so much to get into here, because obviously you listed off all the things that you guys do now.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what those, so what was the next step then? So you're upselling, you're starting to take on new trades. I would assume people that, manage giant rock services. I would assume. So what was like maybe the next big step that you got into?
Probably at that point, it was probably doing some landscape installations where you would have new homes that, were just built. They didn't have anything, and doing, the front landscaping of these houses. I was fortunate enough to have a network and a lot of friends and family that were in the building and, the building trades in the area. So there was a lot of, they have a house that was sitting a little bit, and I would say, let me landscape the spec home. And they would, hem and haw a little bit. Okay. And, we would go and put some shrubs and a tree in front. And that was probably the first bigger type thing that we did, learning wise.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate for those people. And it was good that I had that circle of people, because without having that circle of people, I would have never probably got the opportunity to do those types of things.
Yeah. Well, I will say, give yourself a little more credit, because I would say your reputation, at the end of the day, it's money, it's business.
Sure.
And their reputation is on the line.
Correct.
So they would have never brought you on if you weren't doing a good enough job to earn it in the first place.
Yes.
So I think that's important for people to pay attention to at home. At the end of the day, there could be opportunities up the wazoo, but if you're not doing what you need to on your end, you're never going to fulfill that opportunity or actually take advantage of it.
Yes, that is very true.
So how did those initial projects go? And were you working a ton during those times? Were you doing the work? Or
I was out there. I was a little bit more involved, because those projects were, like you said, you want to make sure that you do a good job. So those were always, seems very simple to take anybody and say, here, go throw these 25 shrubs and 2 trees in the front of this house and put some mulch around it.
Yeah.
But you could take the same, the same 25 shrubs and the same 2 trees and go do a house and really make sure it's perfect and nice, compared to the guy that's sloppy about it. And it makes a big difference, which essentially then kind of earns you the next job. And people see that sign in front, and they drive through the subdivision and say, wow, that's a nice job and it's a nice sign. And you know what? I'm going to give them a call. And, that's kind of what opens up what started to open up some doors with doing, regular residential landscape from that point.
Yeah. I'm going to tie it back to another thing, that long-term mindset that you were always thinking about, what does this do for my future?
Sure.
I think that's so valuable for people to pay attention to,
Absolutely.
because at the end of the day, like you said, you looked at it as this one job could turn into 100 over my career, right? Just from that one builder. You weren't thinking about, thank goodness I got this one job. I'm just going to I'm going to do this and get back to my normal stuff, right? You're thinking about, holy smokes, if I land this and crush it, that turns into 100 more jobs, right?
You're exactly right. Yes, that's a very good point you bring up. And it's kind of probably one of the things that I have looked at in the future and I've never noticed that until you kind of bring that out and say that. But I have said that before, and I've said to people the same thing, you know, people that work for me or whatever, like, well, we're going to do this job and we're going to do it like really good. And there's been times that I've done that job, that first one or whatever, and maybe I didn't make as much money as I should have, or maybe I spent more time there because I wanted it to be that much better.
Yeah.
And it's difficult because a lot of people will look at it at that point and say, like, okay, it's good. It's a passing grade. Let's go. You know, where you spend a little bit of extra time and a little bit of extra detail, and all of a sudden people start to pick up on that. You know, people see the attention to detail, and they, you know, they want that. That's what people are paying for a service. They want it done the right way.
You've earned that trust with that builder as well.
Yes.
In the same way that we talked about earning the trust with the homeowner.
Correct.
You've earned that trust with that builder that might not go away forever. I mean, you might get that guy's business for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Which is insane to think about. But okay, so that's cool. So was a lot of that pretty standard stuff for a while, and then did you dive into custom stuff, or how did
that
the sequence of events?
All pretty like standard stuff. You know, we were doing like, you know, a front yard of let's say a 2,000 square foot ranch house, and you know, we would just do the plantings and stuff. At one point, we used to like subcontract the sod and the sprinklers on the jobs as well. That was always a little tricky because at the time we were doing it kind of to give the builder a one-stop shop, but at the end of the day, it wasn't really like profitable. And then you know, if there's one little problem, you end up like losing money, you know? So that was kind of how we started. And then from there, we got into probably, with some of those jobs kind of blossomed into bigger jobs. So you go from doing, let's say, a 2,000 square foot ranch to now you're doing a 4,000 square foot colonial, you know, in a much larger neighborhood and a bigger property and stuff. And we started doing jobs that way. And those were always a little bit, definitely there was more of a learning curve when you get to the, you know, going up a level to the next type of a job. There was a lot more of a learning curve, you know, and stuff like that. Yeah. But it was kind of what made us, you know, learn essentially was that.
Well, it's higher risk at that point. I mean, obviously you're ordering at higher values, and a mistake is a lot more painful.
Correct.
Than when you're ordering small margins. So it hurts a little bit more when someone, if you made that rock mistake on a giant property, that could have been really bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
So were you, tell me about your stress during these times. Like, were there massive peaks and valleys, or where were you at in a lot of it? Was each new phase like?
I was always stressed out, I think, throughout all of it, to be honest. I mean, it was always something that, you know, I worried about things that didn't even necessarily matter. Sometimes I think I worried too much. I still do. But those kind of things are what I guess made me into what I am today and what my company is today, is because I did worry about the smallest little detail of something. But on the flip side, maybe it was maybe if I didn't worry about so much about the smallest little thing, like you mentioned earlier, the 80% is usually fine, you know, you're probably right. And sometimes that extra little bit of worry is not worth the pain. You know what I mean?
Well, it sounds like this is, I guess, to simplify it, you always fall above that 80% because you care a little bit extra, and you're going to be on your guys to make sure that it is done right.
Yep.
And meanwhile, maybe the competition and people that maybe went in and out of business at some point slowly started falling below that 80.
True.
Then it was 70. Then it was 60.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, they have nothing to stand on anymore. So
you're right.
I think it's all about that long-term mindset that you always had. So that's pretty cool. I want to give you credit for that.
Thank you.
All right. So you're doing these massive projects. Are they custom? Are you a part of designing at this point, or what does that look like?
Not really. A lot of times they were those type of projects in the beginning were usually jobs that the customer already had some sort of a design implemented. We weren't like quite getting into the full scale designing. There's a couple designers that we worked with that would, you know, like we would pay them kind of like freelance for the job.
Yeah.
And they would go in and, you know, design a project a lot of times I would meet with the customers and then sit with the designer and explain it, and then the designer would put it all on paper. And that was definitely when I started doing those types of jobs where it was essentially like growing more from just a builder type job to those type of jobs. That was a little bit of a tough spot because I was investing a lot of time and a lot of money with the designer to put together a plan for this house. And at the end of the day, there was older gentlemen that I have an enormous amount of respect for in the industry that would say to me that they were essentially competitors of mine, but at a lot higher level. They would say to me, "Are you charging for the design? How much are you charging the people for the design?" And it was like the question I never wanted to hear from somebody like that because I knew what they wanted to hear and I knew what my answer was. But a lot of times I was not charging the customer. And they would say to me, "You have to charge them. You're essentially giving them all that service you're giving them for the design is a service in itself. So if you're not charging them for that, you're essentially giving away your services. So now when you have to go give them..."
Similar to what your dad was telling you about charging for your time, even though you were just supervising and managing.
Correct. And at that point, now I'm going to go say somebody builds a new home and they need a plan for their house. Well, I come to them and design it all, and I don't charge them anything for it. Well, now when I have to go give them the price for it, they automatically now are going to try to start haggling with me because they say he's already somewhat committed. Yeah. Some of these people are like expert negotiators. They say, "Well, that guy's got this much time into this. He doesn't want to lose this," and that's true. And then that was like probably one of the hardest steps in the whole landscape construction industry that I had to really make was going from giving away that design service to like talking to a customer and saying, "Okay, well, we have to have a designer come out and it's a $500 charge for the design or whatever it is." And it's funny because a lot of those customers would automatically say to me, "Well, I just want you to give me a price." And I said, "Well, I have nothing to price off of if we don't have that."
Yeah.
So it was then though that the haggling bad customers would automatically...
You drop them off right away.
They would already fall off immediately. Yeah. They wouldn't want it. They would say, "Well, I'm not going to go pay this guy to do that." But it was tough because trying to prove yourself and like show people that you can do a nice job. And then I had to ride a tight line where like I had to show that I could do this. And the only way I could really show it is to essentially get the job, without...
But you validated right off the bat who valued your business.
Correct.
Who valued what you do, your time. Those are the customers that you want.
Exactly.
And likely those are customers that you probably have return business for.
Yes.
Is because, again, you have that mutual respect for each other, right? When you are able to cut right off the people that don't respect you and don't value your time.
Yep.
In the end, I'm sure in the moment it was very much so, this sucks. I hate losing jobs, but at the end of the day, it validated all. You gained great customers out of it.
Absolutely, and it was really, really difficult. Where, like, I started to, even still to this day, I still deal with people sometimes that call me and say, "I want you to do my house. You're going to do my house," and they give you a big talk, and I don't know these people at all, And okay, great, okay. Well, the next step is I need to have a designer put together a plan for your job and it's going to cost X. Well, no, but I want you to do it. You just got to give me a price. How much? But I can't give you a price without having that. So it's funny because there's some people that like still to this day will like try to like arm wrestle me to the grave.
Yep.
And I'll say to them, if you don't, this is the first part of it. You like my work and you like our jobs because they look good. You don't like them because, there's a special type of a bush that nobody else can buy.
Yeah.
You like them because they look good and they feel good and they're what you want. That starts from this part, from the design,
That's part of you being a business though.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, I think the problem in any industry, whether it's building, whether it's landscape, whether it's anything construction related, is that you are building in all those things that allow you to be a business.
Correct.
Right? There's always going to be Joe and his truck that can do it for cheaper.
Yeah.
And that's going to whatever, right? But they're not going to offer the warranty. It's all the things that come with being a legitimate business.
Correct.
And so it's tough. Again, you're cutting out a big portion of the world, because there's a lot of people that just want to, who's going to do it for the cheapest and who's going to cut me a deal or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, like you said, in order to be in business for as long as you haven't continued to be in business, you have to have good customers that value you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really interesting. All right. So I want to get into the whole big picture. You got all these arms of the business now.
Yes.
And you also built the facility. So what year did you build that facility? When did you start realizing, holy smokes, I need help managing all this craziness?
The facility, actually, we did not build. We bought the facility that was already built. But that was...
or when did you start building your team, I guess? When did you start having someone take calls? And when did that all start?
Then I started with my first... we went from a few different places as far as office or shop type things.
Well then, tell me about that if you don't mind. So when did you start have someone take calls for you? I guess that was probably a big step too.
Yeah, that was definitely a big step. That was when I moved to my office in Shelby. I had about a 2,000 square foot building essentially that we leased, and there was a small office, cut off the side of it. And I had one lady that worked for me that would, take the calls and stuff like that. That was in about 2007, I want to say, somewhere around there, 2006.
Where were you at in the business at that point? Were you doing the larger homes that you were just describing?
We were just kind of starting to do those type of jobs. Okay. Yeah, it was kind of that's where it was kind of blossoming overall. But that's when we were starting to do the jobs that were the nicer jobs, and they're a little bit more intricate and stuff like that.
So you were spending a lot of your time doing that, and I would assume the office was facilitating the more repeatable, easy, hey, cut my lawn type
Exactly.
Right?
Yep, exactly. And then we had, I don't remember exactly, but, a handful of crews that cut grass, and then we had the office that would take the calls and all that stuff. And it was... At that point, then I started to, expand and do more and more. And then it was you can only manage so much by yourself.
Yeah.
Then I went through a couple different, people that were in the management team that were great people overall. Some of them, they were not necessarily put in the right spot, maybe that they should have been, or they didn't understand certain things that we were doing. And that was difficult too, you try to I'd have my crew of my main guys that were in the field, and I try to tell them, you have to kind of trust this person. Well, then that person was doing stuff or, showing them things that was not right or, not how we would normally do it. So I was trying to guide the,
It's almost like you had to create that rule book.
Yes.
Of these are the standards. This is how you do things. And I would assume that had to have taken a lot of time to set those guidelines.
Yes,
and create those
it was very, very difficult. So, and then one of the first, management people that I had was not the first one, but one that's still with me today was somebody that he came to me multiple times and he wanted to work for me.
Yeah.
And he was a younger guy, and he came to me multiple different times, said he wanted to work for me. And, for whatever reason, the first time I didn't, hire him. The second time I didn't. Finally, we ended up, I said, you know what? This guy has to be good. He's very, he's emotionally driven to this, and there's something that he sees here, and that's, I think that's where I started having the first success with the right people, is because you have somebody that wants to be there, and you have somebody that they're not just there because it's just a job. You have somebody that's involved, and they like to see the progress and stuff like that.
No, that's huge. Because they shared almost the same thing that allowed you to have the initial success
Correct.
In the first place.
Correct.
Right? You cared about the product. You cared about how it came out. And until you had someone else that cared to a similar extent,
yes.
It was going to be very hard to scale.
Correct.
So
absolutely.
That's really interesting. Okay. Yeah. So where did the snow division come about? How did that, when you started doing
snow is obviously because of the weather here in Michigan.
Yeah, understood.
You know, we get done after, you know, the end of November and there's not much to do, you know, so we started doing snow removal. For snow removal, we mostly just do commercial snow removal.
Okay.
So that's also a little bit of a tricky balance because we started off doing a lot of residential work. You know, we didn't have a lot of commercial accounts that were letting us cut their grass as a 16-year-old kid. You know, like there was a lot of residential stuff. And then we wanted to start doing commercial snow because it seemed to be the way that we were set up more of a profitable thing and a little easier, where the residential, you have, you know, 100 people calling you at 8 o'clock in the morning while their driveways got snow.
Yeah. So
we started doing commercial snow, and we actually worked a lot of the bigger jobs that we did in the beginning were actually as like a subcontractor for other larger vendors for snow. Because one thing I've learned with snow is you can never have enough people and enough equipment and stuff. So there's a huge window of other professionals like myself or a lot of other, you know, commercial contractors that need other people to do some of the smaller jobs or whatever. So that's kind of how we got into the snow side of it.
Okay. And so what altogether, now you're managing how many different people are managing each arm of the business? So you've got snow, you've got kind of the repeatable. How many lawns are you guys doing nowadays?
I don't even know, to be honest. It's funny because now we do a lot of commercial stuff. So it's funny. Before I used to know the answer, like, because it was based on houses.
Yeah.
Well, now you go get one condo complex, let's say, that's equal to like whatever, 50 houses. So it's kind of a tricky equation. But
so is there someone who manages just that part of it?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So you've got someone who manages, I would assume, snow, or no?
Yes. Yep. I have a few different guys that kind of handle the snow envelope altogether.
Okay.
And then a gentleman that handles like the lawn maintenance and that. Another gentleman handles more of the like landscape enhancement type stuff. So not quite the brand new installation.
But hey, I want you to improve what we currently have type of thing? Okay.
Yeah. Plant flowers and mulch and trim and, those types of stuff. And then we have another two gentlemen that work. I'm more myself involved on the landscape construction side with another two gentlemen that kind of manage the jobs. One of them manages and estimates. The other one was a newer guy who's handling more of like the project management of the
on-site stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what does that look like in terms of now where you're managing? So how many are you holding meetings every single week to make sure everybody's on the same page? How are you?
Yes and no. I mean, it's a lot of communication.
Yeah.
Communication is...
You're on the phone all day long, I assume.
And communicating with everybody is like the most important thing. And in today's world, I feel like it drives me crazy, even myself, where some people they'll go through like all of this back and forth and all this, like, sometimes it's funny because like I'll see a conversation, let's say on a text message going the wrong way, and you pick up the phone and call the people. Okay, you need this, this, and this. Okay. We can't be there tomorrow. We can be there this day. Okay, that works. No problem. Done. And that's the end of it. Nowadays, with the younger world that I say younger, I still feel like whether I am or I'm not, but I mean, the younger generation and the world that we live in, not just the younger people either, though. It's like they want to do everything from a text message. But the problem is that the younger people, they understand it like the back of their hand.
Yeah.
Then the older people, like I'm 36 myself, so the people that are older than me, they may not quite understand the tone of it as much as the younger
100%.
people. I can't tell you how many times this happens, and it sounds very stupid to bring it up like this, but it's a big thing. Like, pick up the phone and call somebody. I can't tell you how many times it happens to me that one of my managers or one of my people, let's just say, will say something to somebody else of, well, we can't be there for 2 days. And, this person responds in a certain way. And then they're talking about, is the guy mad? Is he not? I go, let's just call him. Hey, does this work for you or no? Is it like, yeah, it's fine. Okay. Good. Because whether he was mad or not, they're already going to think like
he could have texted back, fine.
Yes.
And it's
you're right. And now all of a sudden it's like,
oh my God, this guy's
he's mad. Yep. You know, everyone's on on eggshells walking. So communication is key, though, is what I'm trying to get at. And it's very, in today's world, it's definitely like, it's hard. I mean, it's very easy to communicate, I think, which makes it so hard because there's so many different, like.
It's very easy to get into what's the most efficient way to do this.
Yeah.
And not necessarily what's the right way in that particular context.
Correct.
Because you could be in a situation where, it is easy to just fire over a quick text or whatever it could be, but that homeowner, that person could need to hear your voice to make sure, hey, do they even know that I'm here or care about me or whatever? Sometimes you need a little consoling.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And I mean, this is obviously, the show is more geared for people that are starting in the industry, that are younger. And like, I can't say it enough. Like, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and talk to somebody. Like, there's some people that I deal with that are probably some of the most successful people. There's one gentleman in particularly that is an extremely successful individual, older, than me. And there's no email. This gentleman, you call, you meet, okay? It's a handshake. There's no contract. I mean, there could be, but there's no contracts and 85-page PDFs and all this. It's, okay, this is what I want. How much is it? Okay, go to work. Thank you. And you're done. Here's your check. Thank you. And it's like amazing how simple that could be.
It is interesting. That's so weird that you say that. I've never thought about it that way because think about the word I just used was efficient.
Yeah. Yeah.
Realistically, it might not be. It might be the opposite. Yes. It might be making it more complicated by all the text messages, all the contracts, all the whatever. Yeah. It could make it adds more time.
Yeah. It's true. It's kind of funny because like there's certain times that those kind of people, like, they want to send me a plan for something. Okay, just email it to me. No, I got to go meet them to go get the paper from them. Like, you could do this in 2 minutes. All you have to do is just get it to me. Like, so it's a tough balance because
it's situational, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that's definitely one thing that has changed tremendously. Like, in today's world compared to how things used to be a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, one last question I have in regards to now that you're managing all these people. So
sure.
what would be something now that you have all these different arms, all these people that you're trusting? What's a big thing that you're learning right now? I would say like most recent, whatever comes top to mind, a thing that you're learning in terms of managing people and being a leader.
To really have trust in what the person's doing, to have trust in the manager, the person that is working for you, and also to be complimentary of it. There's certain people that don't like to compliment things, and they like to only, when you do something wrong, they'll be happy to make sure that you did it wrong. But compliment people. You got to build people's motivation. You got to build them up. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned is motivating people, is making them feel good and showing them that you care that this stuff is done the right way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's honestly, it's a really interesting way to think about it, because if you're going to hire someone and put money in their pockets, in what world do you not believe in that person, or why would you hire them if you don't?
True.
Absolutely. So if you're not going to communicate that, or you don't feel that, then what are you doing hiring this person, or what are you doing having this person represent your company?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting point. So if you are willing to make that jump and trust them with that, then you better let them know that you do.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
That's
absolutely.
a really, really interesting point. All right. Well, I really want to thank you for the time. I want to kind of wrap things up with a couple short takeaways for people at home here.
Absolutely.
So I take this in two different directions. So one is in regard to your industry in particular.
Okay.
So try to be as specific as you can. And then the second is just life advice, right? And just in what you've experienced over time.
Sure.
So the first one is, what are the first three things that you would tell that person that's 17, 18, 19, getting started, that maybe wants to be in landscaping? What would be some advice for that particular industry that you would give them starting out?
In the landscape industry, I would say,
maybe things that are most important.
do a good job. Do a good job and do a thorough job. Do what you say you're going to do. Whether that's one or two things, I guess, depends how you look at it.
Yeah.
And don't sell yourself short. If you hear that the other person is doing something for $500 and you look at it and say, well, I can do it for $100 and make money still, you probably can. But eventually you're going to have other costs that come on and other things that get added on. And always charge enough for what you have to charge, where that's a mistake that I made going into it. There'd be times that I would try to say, well, if I do it for $100 and make money, it's not my fault. You have to charge $500 to make money, but essentially it doesn't help because I end up for me to get the $100 to $500 is almost impossible.
Yeah.
To try to raise your prices. Like
I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where if I would have just started off at, for an example, 400, it's not that hard to, slowly inch up like that. But those would be some of the main things as far as the advice. Charge enough, do a good job, and do what you say you're going to do.
Well, I think that's those kind of tie together, to be honest with you, because think about it this way. If you're charging something that's a high value item, you're going to have high expectations of yourself.
Correct.
If you're charging in that negative, it's almost like a negative mindset. If you're charging the bare minimum, what is your work going to look like? It's going to be like, how can I save money? How can I do this at the bare minimum so that I can still survive, still make money?
Yes.
No one's going to be happy with that product.
Correct.
If you charge at a high premium, you're going to do your best.
And another, I guess, word of advice for somebody looking to get into the landscape industry would be charge. I'll never forget this as long as I live. I did a job on a very high-end golf community in the area, and the gentleman was he was an executive for a very large company, and the person who referred me to him, I told him I seen him after, and we built this beautiful wall on the golf course that was like a retaining wall for his property.
Cool, yeah.
And the person who referred me to this guy, I seen him shortly after, and I said, hey, thank you very much for the referral from so-and-so. I appreciate it. And he said, how did it come out? I said, it came out great. He goes, you know what's nice about them? He said, you can charge them enough money to do a really good job. And I never really thought of those words in that regard. You always think you should do a good job. You always think you got to charge enough money. He made it sound very simple, but you can charge them enough money to do a good job. So essentially, if you're going to go in and try to do the job for bare bones, well, now it's hard to do a good job.
Yeah.
The other way around, you have the ability to
do it the right way.
Do it the right way.
Yeah,
exactly.
100%. All right. So, and then I guess what would be some 3 pieces of advice just starting out? And maybe this could be more, I'll guide you in the direction.
Life.
Yeah, just getting started. At the end of the day, you chose landscaping. Mm-hmm. Your dad chose pizzeria.
Yep.
You could have went to school and gotten a normal 9-to-5 job. Like, what would be some piece of advice in terms of just figuring out what your direction is in life?
I would say to do whatever it is that you have a passion for. If there's something in particular that you have a passion for, whether it's landscaping or whether it's a restaurant or whatever that may be, I would say do what you have a passion for. And make time for your family. That's probably one of the hardest things now that I deal with, is because I have 3 beautiful boys and a wife. But before, when I was single and I was by myself, it was 100% drive to get as much work done in a day. And now it's like I can get as much done as I can by a certain time.
At a certain threshold, yeah.
I have to stop because it's, important as a father to be there for your kids, So that spending time with your family is important, and following a passion ultimately.
Okay. I want to thank you today for your time, and it's so funny that in today we talked about so much about valuing your time and all that, and I want you to understand that I value it greatly, and absolutely. I really appreciate you being here. So
thank you.
Guys, I want to thank you for making the time to learn today, believing in the possibility that life can be better, and challenging yourself to grow. I believe everybody's pursuing what they feel to be their dream life, and hopefully today you guys got one step closer. We'll see you next time, and never stop pursuing precision. All right, everybody, that is going to conclude episode 14 with Sam Marino. I hope you guys took Amazing takeaways from this episode. It was an honor to sit next to this man and hear his story from zero. I hope you guys took just as much from that. I'm now going to recap, for me personally, the top 3 things that I took. 1, always keep in mind, what is this choice or this decision that I'm about to make going to do for me in the long term? Everybody's always so worried about what's happening in the now and that next quick buck or that next quick opportunity, and lack the patience and understanding of what that's going to do for them long term and how that's going to affect them. And in this interview with Sam, the amount of decisions that he made that were going to benefit him long term versus taking that next quick buck or that next quick opportunity is really the only reason that he's been able to scale and be at the magnitude that he's at now in business for 19 years. 2, the only race that you should be aware of is the one between you and yourself. He talked about back in the day, starting out at 15, 16, 17, at a young age, all of his friends were kind of doing similar things. They were all cutting lawns. They were all competing against each other, telling each other how many lawns they did, how much they were charging, and always trying to compete against each other. And Sam, instead, was always worried about what he could do to the best of his abilities based on the position that he was in. And what that did is it allowed him to focus on his own path, to focus on his own skills, his own opportunities. And you look 19 years into the future, and none of those friends that he was with in the past are in business anymore, and he still is. 3, taking exceptional pride in the product or service that you offer is going to be one of the biggest keys to longevity. Now, in Sam's story, he was fortunate to get the opportunity to do some work for builders, right? They were building a new home, and so he would get the opportunity, especially early on when he was starting in his journey, he had the opportunity to land that job. And if he didn't do a good job, that was going to be it. He would get that one job, that new construction, and that was going to be the end of it. But instead, he obsessed over the details. He made sure every single inch of that job was done perfectly. And what that turned into is return business for him over the now 19 years he's been in business, and could have turned into hundreds of jobs over that duration of time instead of just that initial one. All right, guys, I want to thank you one last time for tuning in to episode 14 with Sam Marino. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. We cannot wait to see you in the next one, and never stop pursuing precision.